We continue with the Stephen Avery jury trial, Voir Day 4, February 8, 2007. The court. Before we bring in the next juror, I just want to make a follow-up response to defense counsel's objection on the my imposition of the 20-minute time limit on the questioning of Mr. Gray. As I think I indicated yesterday, I allowed at least each of the parties once to exceed the 20-minute time limit because I thought the nature of the answers being given by the jurors warranted it. In the case of Mr. Gray, I did not detect any answers that he gave to questions along the way that would have indicated the questions could not be handled within 20 minutes, and that is why I terminated the questioning. I believe our next juror is, number 71, Nancy Steinmetz. Ms. Steinmetz, please raise your right hand and the clerk will administer the oath to you. Juror sworn. The clerk, please be seated. Voir dire examination by Attorney Kratz.
Ms. Steinmetz, good morning. My name is Ken Kratz. I'm the Calumet County District Attorney. I'm the lead prosecutor in this case. With me this morning is Tom Fallon.
Good morning.
From the Department of Justice, Attorney General's Office. He'll be assisting not only this morning, but also throughout the case. I note, Ms. Steinmetz, that you currently work at the American Club. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you are involved in some kind of a secretarial position, at least answering phones, is that right?
Telecommunications.
Okay. Could you describe that a little more in detail? What is it that you do there?
I take the incoming calls and direct them to the correct place of business.
It's a rather large facility, so I suspect there's a lot of incoming calls or places throughout them. Is that
correct?
Is that correct? You've done it for 22 years, is that right?
No, I've done that for about 4 years. About 10 years prior to that, I was still at the American Club and I was in a supervisory position in the banquet area.
Ms. Steinmetz, where would you say that you get most of your news from? The television, newspaper, or some other sources?
Not much of anywhere. I was working night shifts, so I didn't watch the news. Don't get a newspaper. We do get a Newsweek, which I read a little bit once in a while, but that's about it.
Could be more of a national or world publication?
It's a world news. If we do see something, I take my 20-minute break in the break room, and they do have a TV, but it's set at world news. And then I guess the Newsweek is kind of like more of a world news.
Do I understand that you're still working second shift or later shift, or has that gone to a different shift?
About 6 months ago, my hours changed. I do 3 days during the day, and then I do two night shifts.
All right. Your husband is involved in farming?
Correct.
And has that been for most of his life?
All of his life.
All right. Ms. Steinmetz, if you do receive any local news because of where you work, would it be fair to assume that it may be more centered in the Sheboygan County area rather than Manitowoc? Or is that not necessarily true?
To be honest with you, I don't know much news about anything, I guess.
Not much about either, huh?
No.
All right.
No.
Have you heard of the case for which you are summoned here as a potential juror, the Stephen Avery case?
About over a year ago, maybe, around Halloween time. Just very little bit of it, not much of anything. And then day goes on as normal. I didn't.
Are you, Jen? Pay attention to it. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Are you generally aware of the allegations against Mr. Avery?
I am at this point, yes.
Did you become aware of those because of your involvement in this case and the instructions by the judge? Or was that from either a news source or out in the community somewhere?
When I got my first questionnaire in October, and it said from this period to this period, and I'm thinking, well, my husband just got his jury duty, and it's only a month, and he has to call in. And I've never been asked before, and I'm thinking, well, this is a little strange. And I mentioned it to one of my associates, and she says, oh, I bet I know what it is. And she went on the computer and she says, I bet it's the Avery case. And I said, no way. And that was about all that I got involved on that, because then if it was, I shouldn't be trying to see what I could find out about it or anything.
About 3 weeks ago, or perhaps even a little more, you received a letter from the judge instructing you not to watch any news accounts or not to read anything about this case. Is that right?
Correct.
Have you been able to do that?
No. I see a flash, my ears close. My eyes close. I plug my ears, count to 50. So, no, I've seen absolutely nothing.
All right. So you've done your absolute best.
My absolute best.
To avoid any influence. That's good. Ms. Steinmetz, do you watch much television at home in the evening, or specifically shows that may be crime-related, CSI, or anything like that?
On occasion, we will watch CSI. Not very often. Not very often at all.
Let me just stop you there. Does that kind of show, or that topic, if you will, of shows, does that interest you?
It's a little bit interesting, but it's not something that I have to turn on to watch. It's just something that we turn on because there's nothing else on at the time, or we've just don't have anything else to do. We just flip the stations, and once in a while we watch it.
Do you watch any other shows that are not necessarily only entertainment, but perhaps more of a documentary nature? Forensic Files, or anything that are depictions of what is supposed to be real life kind of cases?
No. We watch a lot of the Discovery Channel. How do you make this, or how is this made? I watch Grey's Anatomy. I like that. I watch Ugly Betty, and that's about as late as I stay up. By the time you get home from work and make dinner and clean up, there's only a little bit of time that we might sit in front of the tube, and I'm in bed by 9.
All right. I suspect from Grey's Anatomy or any of those kinds of shows, you don't necessarily believe that you have a good grasp of the medical field or anything like that, do you?
No, it's just entertainment. Kind of who's doing with who, what with who, a little soap opera.
Are you familiar with a kind of evidence called DNA evidence?
Yes.
Tell me what you know about that.
From what I know, it's just that DNA can be mashed up to fit another person's identity. That it's like a fingerprint, where only one person has the specific little things that show up in the DNA.
That it's unique to one,
exactly,
person, and nobody else has the same DNA?
Right. It's like,
all right,
a fingerprint. It can't be related to anyone else.
And from what you've known or heard about that on on TV, would you suspect that to be relatively accurate kinds of information? In other words, that is an accurate way to identify either evidence or individuals from which DNA came? I would think it would be pretty darn close to accurate. All right. What I'm asking, though, is there anything that you know about DNA evidence that causes you pause or concern about that kind of analysis or that kind of evidence? No, I don't think so. Have you ever had any run-ins? I note that your answer was yes. I note that your answer was no. But let me ask you this a little broader. Experiences, perhaps, with the Manitowoc County law enforcement officials that in some way questioned you, either about their integrity or about the job that they're doing? No. You have a generally positive or negative view about how the Manitowoc law enforcement community is doing their job. I've only been in Manitowoc maybe a handful of times. I meant the county. The county. Entire county law enforcement community. Do you have an opinion about how they're doing their job? None whatsoever. Do you feel safe in your community? Yes. Okay. Ms. Steinmetz, would you consider yourself a detail-oriented person that likes to make lists and things like that? Or do you consider yourself more of a big picture kind of a person? Detail-oriented. In fact, we just had a little appreciation thing with all the employers 2 weeks ago, and I got a little plaque saying that the detail-orientated, team worker, that type of thing. All right, that's nice. Do you like puzzles? Somewhat, not real difficult ones, but what kind of puzzles do you like? I like the kind where you can just kind of like fill in the word, find the words within. Word search. Yes, otherwise I don't do too much for puzzles. All right. Not a jigsaw puzzle person or anything like that? No. Ms. Steinmetz, if you had to serve on this perhaps 6-week jury process, would that cause any personal or financial hardship for you? No. Let me ask you this, Ms. Steinmetz. Once you, even several months ago, thought that you might possibly be on this important jury. Did you look forward to that? Do you look forward to being a member of this jury? Or would you kind of feel awkward or concerned about that? I don't feel awkward. It's probably like a 50-50. I would take it very seriously. It would kind of, if I knew that I was part of it, it's like, okay, I was selected. I'm a fairly smart person, I think, but it would still have, it's a major decision that would be, you'd have to be really sure. Sure? About, so it's kind of like a 50-50. So you would take your responsibilities very seriously, and you'd be able to listen to the instructions that the court would give you in deciding this case? Is that what? Yes. You're telling us? Yes. All right. And although maybe not looking forward to it, if asked to serve, you'd certainly do that. Is that right? Yes. Now, you have all sons, is that right? Yes, I do. No daughters? No daughters. Are any of your sons married? One is married, my oldest. And do you have any grandchildren? No. Have either of your sons or your daughter-in-law spoken to you about the Stephen Avery case? No. Do you know if they're aware of it?
I think so, because when I got my first notice, I had it up on the refrigerator, and when they would come home, that it might be, but we haven't talked about anything with it.
Okay. You've told us in your questionnaire, and I'm almost through here, but you've told us in your questionnaire that you have not formed an opinion about Mr. Avery's guilt or innocence, and any opinion that you may have, you'd be able to set aside, deciding this case solely on the evidence as presented. Is that still true today?
Very much so.
As Mr. Avery sits here today, he is presumed innocent and may or may not testify in this case. Are you familiar at all with those legal principles that we have in this country?
It's my understanding that a person's innocent until proven, without a question, guilty.
And when you hear evidence, either from law enforcement officers, scientists, or citizens, would you be able to listen to everybody's testimony, giving that testimony such weight as you believe it's entitled to receive?
Yes.
Is there anything, Mrs. Steinmetz, that I haven't asked you? Any pause that you have about sitting on this jury or something that perhaps wasn't in the questionnaire that you would feel would disqualify you as a potential juror in this case?
No.
All right, Attorney Krause. With that, that's all I have, Judge. Thank you.
The court. All right, Mr. Buting. Attorney Buting. Thank you, Judge. Voir dire examination by Attorney Buting. Good morning. Good morning. How do you pronounce your name?
Steinmetz.
Steinmetz, okay. Spelled a little differently sometimes. It is. My first 4 years of marriage, I spelled it wrong until mother-in-law pointed it out. Well, my name's Jerome Buting. This is Dean Strang, and we represent Stephen Avery. All right? We really appreciate you coming here today, and I can tell you really take this seriously. You have, well, I'll talk about your sons in just a minute, but okay. Your husband's a farmer, so you live, what kind of farm is it? Dairy farm? It's a dairy farm. He was raised as a farmer. He had his own business. He was an AI technician, and then one of the farms that he would do his breeding at, they were enlarging, and they had persuaded him to give up his business and relocate to this other farm. And it's a very large dairy farm, and he's just a farmhand worker. Oh, I see. So it's not his farm? No, it is not. No. Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering why none of your sons decided to go into farming or work with them, but I guess that explains it. One was going to college for veterinary medicine, but he made the decision, well, it wasn't for me, and I have to be happy, so he went into a different field. I see one of them's in the Peace Corps. That's the one that was going to be a veterinarian, yes. Is he overseas then, or? Him and his wife are in Costa Rica. Okay, so do you get to see them very often, or? No, I haven't seen them since they left in first part of June. Okay, now, I know sounds like you've done a good job of trying to shield yourself from any information in the news, but every once in a while, some blurb will come on the radio, perhaps. Or do you listen to the radio when you drive? I have a CD in the car. Okay, so let me just ask you, are you familiar with the name Brendan Dassey? No? Okay. Have you heard anything about a blood vial? No? Okay, you've done very well. Thank you. I've tried really hard. You said that you've had no real exposure to police, or you didn't have any opinion one way or the other about the kind of job Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department is doing. No, I just get aggravated when solicitation calls from them and they identify themselves, and I'm thinking, oh my God, what happened? Someone get hurt in the family, and it's just a solicitation for donation, and yeah, I just ask them, please don't call back. Okay, that's about as close as I come to them. Okay, do you think that you're going to be hearing from testimony from police officers in this case? Uh-huh. And one of the things you have to do when you're a juror, if you're selected, is to determine the truthfulness or untruthfulness of what people testify about. Do you think that if somebody takes the witness stand and takes the oath, anybody, that they're always going to be telling the truth? I would like to think they do. Okay, but do you think in reality, do you think they always do? Yes, I think so. Yes, I do. Okay, well, what if in this case, as a juror, you hear testimony from one witness that does not seem to be true, that seems to be inconsistent with what another witness has said, or maybe even directly contrary to what they themselves said at a different time? Uh-huh. How are you going to deal with that? I'd have to think that somewhere someone wasn't being completely honest, and we would have to probably just continue to hear what others have to say and be a matter of putting the pieces together so that if the person that wasn't being truthful would end up somehow stumbling over things. Because if you keep saying untruths, you end up getting caught up into something. And something would probably show up more definite that they weren't truthful. Okay. What I'm getting at is that if you're selected as a juror on this case, you're going to have to do more than just assume, or that everything that's said on the witness stand is the truth. Uh-huh. You're going to have to, the judge will instruct you how to determine the credibility of witnesses and what you look at their demeanor and what they say and what they said in the past, and all of those factors you consider to resolve any question about whether the person's telling the truth. Do you think you can do that? Yes, I do. Okay, and in particular, if law enforcement officers, sheriff's deputies, or police officers come up and take the witness stand, the judge is going to tell you that you have to also treat them the same way any other witness and judge their credibility the same way. Do you think you can do that? Yes. You don't think that just because they're police officers, there's just no way they would ever lie under oath? I don't know. They probably could. They're just like anybody else. If a normal person lies under oath, I don't know, I would like to think they wouldn't. Sure, you'd hope not. We'd all hope that. Exactly. Of everybody. But you may have to make those kinds of determinations in this case. And I want to be sure that you feel able to do that. I do. Okay. I do. Okay. Do you think that if you heard evidence that gave you reason to be concerned that perhaps the police did even a little bit more than lie under oath, but that maybe even they become so involved and convinced that the person was guilty, that they crossed the line and either would alter their reports or maybe even plant evidence against a person? Would you consider that? Well, it would be Wouldn't it be difficult to know if they planted evidence or whatever for me to assume that until several other people and everything's coincided together? Sure. I mean, I wouldn't be able to make that decision knowing someone says, well, this. I have nothing to base that. Sure. That isn't the truth until perhaps other things come together on it. Right. And obviously, you've heard no evidence at this point. So I'm not asking you to make any kind of decisions at this point. But I'm just wondering if you'll be open to listen to all the evidence and to consider whether, if some evidence tends to point that way. Whether you would consider that as a possibility or whether, because of some of your beliefs that you bring into the case, you would just say, no, there's just no way. I can't even accept that would ever happen. No, I'm completely open-minded. Okay, very open-minded. Okay, I can see that. I appreciate that. And the one of the questions in the questionnaire goes along with an instruction. Sometimes the judges give, and it talks about a defendant's constitutional right not to testify. And sometimes that's hard for people because they want to, in their daily lives, when you try and find out, make decisions, you like to hear both sides. Are you one of those kinds of people that like to hear both sides before you make a decision? Yes. However, if, let's say Mr. Avery's side has all these witnesses and you feel comfortable in that, if Mr. Avery isn't comfortable with going up there and having someone try to tear him down a little bit, and it wouldn't be to his benefit, if he felt that the other witnesses were positive for you, why would he go up and possibly have it be a negative for himself? Okay, and so you could follow the court's instruction that you're not supposed to consider that decision against him in some way or speculate? Correct. And because the state has the burden of proof, if the defense did put on any witnesses, would you hold us up to some burden and say, well, you haven't proven your case? I don't know. Because what you have to do is you have to look only at means you have to look at the state's case and see if the state has convinced you beyond a reasonable doubt. Correct. And I just want to be sure that you're not going to impose some burden on Mr. Avery to prove that he's innocent. No. You can do that? I can do that. Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. Appreciate it. All right. The court. At this time, the clerk will escort you from the courtroom. Juror Steinmetz. I think I need a glass of water. Thank you, everyone. Attorney Buting. Thank you. Wherein juror is escorted out. The court. Counsel, any motion from either party? Attorney Kratz. I've never had a juror thank me before, Judge, but no, there's no motion by the state. Attorney Buting. No motion by the defense, and for the record, if you would note, I only took 12 minutes, I think. The court. Right, I note that. Perhaps that was why she was thanking you. I'm not sure. But at any rate, we'll keep her on the panel and move on to the next juror. Ms. Barber, please raise your right hand and the clerk will administer the oath. Juror sworn. The clerk. Please be seated. Voir dire examination by Attorney Kratz. Good afternoon, Miss Barber. Good afternoon. I'm Ken Kratz,
the Calumet County District Attorney, who will be serving as lead prosecutor in this case. With me this afternoon is Tom Fallon. Mr. Fallon's an Assistant Attorney General. He works for the Department of Justice. He'll be assisting me not just this afternoon, but also through the presentation of this trial. As the judge has explained, there are some follow-up questions to your answers given in your questionnaire that we need to ask of you. First of all, you still work at Worthington Cylinders. Is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And that's in Chilton?
Yes.
Is that correct? All right. How long have you worked at that position?
28 years. I had to try and think.
All right. You've indicated on the questionnaire that you had previous employment at Chilton Products. Is that correct?
Yes. Worthington Cylinders took over the Chilton Products half of the cylinders, so together in that company building, I've been there 28 years. Worthington, I've been there with Worthington for 4, because they bought out.
All right. I know that, but probably nobody else in this room does.
Okay.
That's why I asked that, Ms. Barber.
Okay.
The connection with Chilton, that is the connection with Calumet County also, causes you to have some familiarity with Mr. Poggle. Is that right?
Yes.
Can you describe that?
Actually, Jerry and I went to school together.
All right.
And that's how I know him. I know him enough to go to him and say, "Hi, Jerry, how's things?" And
all right. Have you had any discussions with Mr. Poggle about this particular case?
no, I haven't.
You were aware, however, early on of Mr. Poggle's involvement in the investigation of this case?
Actually, not. Last time I saw him, none of this had happened, so...
What I'm saying is, you realized early on in this investigation, that Mr. Poggle was involved in the investigation?
Yes, that's why I put it down.
And did you also realize early on that my office, that is the Calumet County District Attorney's Office, had taken over responsibility of the prosecution in the case?
No, not really.
All right. Mrs. Barber, where is it that you most often receive your news?
Most often, television.
And had you recalled, and as you sit here this afternoon, do you recall television news stories regarding this case?
Yes.
Let's go way back to the beginning of this case, in early November of 2005. Did you remember reports of Teresa Havok having been missing, and there was some missing persons or search efforts for her?
Yes.
You did participate in the search? You didn't participate in the search of Miss Havok, did you?
No, I didn't.
Do you know Miss Havok's family or anybody that might be related to her?
No.
You live in Valders, is that right?
Yes.
Which would be just over the Calumet County, Manitowoc County border. Is that right?
About 7 miles in, yeah.
All right. Now, you don't know Investigator Mark Wiegert?
No, I don't.
Ms. Barber, you mentioned in your report that you've had some contact with law enforcement official. We're going to talk about your son in just a moment, but
okay.
Have you personally had any contact with law enforcement officials that in any way has left a bad taste in your mouth about police officers generally?
No.
Have you had any contacts with law enforcement that have been positive in nature? They've helped you either solve a crime for which you may have been a victim of, or maybe just helped on some citizen call that you might have made? I have to answer no to that. If I could preface some of it. Sure, go ahead. I'm a member of the Calumet County Fair Board. Every Labor Day weekend, I was in charge of cleaning the restrooms for the fair. The police officers patrol the grounds at night. My contact with some of them have been through the course of the evening, sitting and having a cup of coffee at 3 o'clock in the morning when we were finished. Okay, all of those are positive things. Would that be Calumet County Sheriff's officers, or City of Chilton officers, or both? That both would help with that. Are you familiar with the former chief, Mr. Albadil from Chilton? Yes, I am. And would those contacts have been positive as well? Definitely. Now, Ms. Barber, you had mentioned quite candidly in your responses that your son had a legal problem or run-in with the law. Okay, I had 2 different sons. 2 different sons? 2 different counties. 2 different counties? 2 different run-ins? Yes. Let's talk about the one that you mentioned here. There was a burglary conviction, which that was my youngest son. Your youngest? And about how long ago did that happen? Oh, I'm going to say 18 years. So quite a long time ago. Yeah, he just turned 18, and you know how stupid they can be. I do. 18. I have me too. 19-year-old son. What county did that occur in? Calumet. And the prosecution, since it was 18 years ago, may have been actually just before I became district attorney. Mr. Poppy was probably the DA then. Yes, he was. Is there anything about that prosecution that you felt your son was treated unfairly, or anything like that? Well, I felt the kid that was in it with him should have gotten a little harsher. The kid with him was only 17, and he got slapped on the hand, and, well, since I wasn't involved, I'm going to ask you a very direct question. The fact that my predecessor, the former district attorney, was involved in that case, would you in any way hold that prosecution against our case here? That is, against me, either me or, no, not at all, or our, I didn't hold it against the court either. You know, he deserved what he got. I just felt it should have gone a little further. I understand. There was also, at least after his conviction, you mentioned some misunderstanding or some problem with his receiving Huber or, no, work release privileges. Other son. Oh, we're on the different case. Exactly. All right. Let me just finish up with your youngest son. Was there, all right, anything else? You'll have to wait until I'm done talking. She can't take down both of us at the same time. Okay. Is there anything about your youngest son's conviction that was either handled inappropriately or after his supervision or contact with law enforcement that you feel was handled inappropriately? No, I don't. All right. You said that there was another son that was involved in something? Yes, my second. That was Manitowoc County. What kind of case was that? That was drunken driving, fleeing. About how long ago was that, Ms. Barber? 15 years. Did that result in a conviction? Yes. And did it result in any kind of punishment for your second son?
9 months in jail.
Is there anything about that investigation or prosecution that you believe was inappropriately handled?
No.
By the way, each of these sons, have they, for lack of a better term, straightened themselves out and doing well now?
Yes, they have.
Okay. Any other law enforcement contacts, either positive or negative, that you think that we should know about to consider whether or not you should serve on this jury?
That would be the only.
You consider yourself a detail-oriented person? Do you make a lot of lists?
No.
So you're more of a big picture?
Apparently.
Miss Barber, are you aware, and I think that you've mentioned that you are, at least generally familiar with some TV shows that deal with crime scene investigations, CSI, or shows like that? Is that correct?
Right.
Do you enjoy that kind of topic?
Yes, I do.
You must be familiar then with a kind of forensic identification, which is called DNA evidence. Is that right?
Right.
From what you've read or what you've known or what you've seen on TV, do you believe that to be a generally it's a scientifically accepted principle? In other words, you think that that's an accurate way for identification in crime scene type cases?
Yes, I do.
Anything that you've learned about DNA analysis or DNA testing that you at all question those results?
No.
Are you familiar with Mr. Avery at all and his past?
From originally, that would be about it. When he first got let out of jail, and
tell me about that. What do you remember?
That he was wrongfully convicted, spent 18 years in prison, and then finally was able to be let out. I'm not sure I remember what came up, but I think the person who identified him said he was the wrong person or something. Not real familiar with it. I just remember him going to the Channel 11's makeover and getting his hair cut and
all right,
spruced up.
Do you remember that wrongful conviction or his exoneration, that is, his release in that case? Was that the result of DNA evidence?
Now that you mention it, yes.
All right. And generally, at least that concept of exonerating people that are wrongfully convicted, do you believe that to be a good thing?
Yes, I do.
Are you familiar with something called the Innocence Project?
That's a group out of Madison that investigates certain crimes.
Investigates people that they believe have been wrongfully accused or convicted.
Okay, yes, I've heard of it.
All right. Ms. Barber, since this would be a 6-week trial, do you have any concerns that sitting on this jury would cause you some financial or other kind of hardship?
No.
Would your company continue to pay you if you had to sit on this jury?
Oh, yes.
Last question, and this is, I guess, more of a general question, something specific, but is this something that you want to do? Is this a jury you'd like to serve on?
Yes, I would.
Can you tell me why?
I just feel I'm open-minded enough to hear all the facts. I feel I was fair with pretty much everything I do.
So you believe that you'd be able to evaluate both sides? You'd be able to evaluate the evidence, listen to the witness's testimony, attribute whatever weight you think it deserved, and make a reasonable decision?
Yes, I do.
Attorney Kraft. That's all the questions I have, Judge. Thank you.
The court. Mr. Strang? Attorney Strang. Thank you. for your examination by Attorney Strang. And thank you for coming in. My name is Dean Strang, and hi there. This is Jerome Buting, and hi, Stephen Avery, after his makeover. Yeah. And I too appreciate you coming in, probably sitting around for a good bit of time waiting for us. Easy one person. I'm probably being way too cautious on this, but you're on the Manitowoc side of the county line? Yes. You live in Manitowoc County? Yes. Okay. And yet you're clearly very involved still in civic life in Chilton. Calumet? Yes. County? Tell me a little bit about that. How that comes to be. The Calumet County Fair Board? Uh-huh. Well, all you had to be was a stockholder in the Fair Association to become on the board of directors, and I just felt it was something I enjoyed doing, taking part in the fair, and sure, putting my input in where I could. I actually thought I did a good job. Okay, and any particular responsibility on the board for one aspect of the annual fair or not? Well, I was in charge of the restroom cleaning, and if my judge of going to other fairs and everybody has to use the restroom, half the time you don't want to walk into them. I made it my point that people weren't going to shy away because it was not clean, so you got it. And you graduated from Chilton High School? Yes, I did. How long did you spend living in Chilton area? I moved into the Manitowoc Balders area in '89, so up until then? Right. Did you live right in Chilton, or? Yes, I did. Okay. Do you have any grandkids? 7. How old is the oldest? 19. And the youngest? She was a year in June. Okay. Is the 19-year-old a young man or a young woman? Young woman. In the area? All 7 of them? She goes to cosmetology school in Appleton. And you noted here that your husband has a chronic health condition that, often can be controlled by medication or diet. Right. Does that give you any concern about being away from the home 8 hours a day or 9 hours a day? No. In fact, Sunday he leaves for South Carolina for a week. He's a construction millwright. Oh, so they send him all over the country. He's pretty much okay. Oh, yeah. Okay, I just wanted to be sure. I'm sorry, this can be, being on a jury is something of a hardship, but there should be a limit to, right, just how much of a hardship. Active in your union? Yes. Obvious, I think. Well, I was an officer in my union. I still am a union member. Have you ever been a steward? I was the financial officer and on the bargaining committee and safety committee, and I was, being on the bargaining committee, I was a steward. So, same, one and the same, yeah. Okay, so when this all first came up, when Teresa Hallback disappeared, and they were looking for her, and then they arrested Stephen Avery, did you follow this pretty closely at the time? No. Okay. Not really. The names were unfamiliar. Sure. And I guess it wasn't something that I really took an interest in. Okay. And that's sort of what I'm exploring. Some people might react to this as a mom or a grandmother. Others not react to it at all if it's not connected. And I'm just trying to gauge how much you sort of plugged into this. Well, pretty much not much. Unless it's, I guess, something that directly involves me, I guess I can hear it and just, no, it's nothing that I follow that close. Okay. I didn't go out of my way to grab a newspaper article or and read it or make it a point that that's where I had to be in front of the television and got it. Usually had something better. Okay, now I've got it. Okay. Now, by the same token, here it is more than a year later. He's here. We're in court. Do you assume he's probably guilty? Do you assume he's probably innocent? Do you have any... I really have no judgment on that at all. I never really looked at it in the way, one way or another. It's something that I guess needed to be proved first. Well, why is he here if he didn't do something wrong? Well, that's what I'd like to know. Okay, and in finding that out, of course you'd like to know that. Right. In finding that out, whose job is that to show you? Theirs? Mine? Both? I would think both. I feel both sides really should present everything. Very natural feeling. And you're walking into a legal system that has some different rules for nearly ancient, or at least 500 or 600 years worth of reasons, I guess. And I think Judge Willis will tell you, and I'm confident he'll tell you, that in a criminal case like this, it's actually just the state that has the burden of proof. The lawyers at this table, they have the only burden of proving anything, and they have to prove Mr. Avery guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, if they can. Okay. We don't have to prove him innocent. Okay. Can you accept that and live with those rules? Sure, it's a rule. It is a rule. And the question is whether you would resist that or, in the end, not be able to follow that for... No, I feel if that's the rule and that's what needs to be done, that's what should be done then. Right. And I'm only predicting what the court's going to tell you. In the end, the court's going to give you the rules, not me. Okay. Just trying to predict, since I've been doing this for a while. Another rule in that respect that we would have to know that you can live with, and I think you've already told me you can and you do, is that he's presumed innocent. That is, Steve Avery is. Right. Not just today, actually, but through this whole trial, right up until the end when you folks, the jury, starts to deliberate. Right. Okay. Only then do you decide what happened. But you've got to presume him innocent right up until you walk into the jury room and start deliberating. Exactly. Okay? Now, there are two sides here. He does have a couple of lawyers, and we're not going to just sit here, although we could under the law. So if we cross-examine the state's witnesses, will you listen to their answers when Jerry Buting and I are asking them questions, just as when the prosecutors are? Yes. Weigh it the same? Yes. How about if we actually call witnesses of our own as defense witnesses? Will you consider Mr. Avery's evidence just as you would the state's? Yes, I would. And the same would be true if they cross-examine our witnesses? Would you listen to the answers given when they ask questions? Yes. Okay. The toughest call on a witness would be Mr. Avery himself. And here's, again, an area where there's specific rules. Because there are a whole variety of reasons, even an innocent person might not testify. If Mr. Avery decided not to testify, I think the court will tell you that you can't consider that at all as any evidence of guilt, or even consider it at all in deciding whether the state has proved him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Can you do that? Yes. Even if you don't hear the other side of the story straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak? Yes. Do you understand that there may be a variety of reasons why an innocent person would not testify in his own defense? Yes, I do. Because I watched CSI. any really court dramas, like Shark. I mean, he's portrayed as an excellent DA. They bring out the fact that defendants do not need to talk, or say anything, and I guess I accept that. Okay, and I don't watch a lot of these shows actually, but the one I tune into once in a while is Law and Order, and it strikes me, and see if you share the same experience. Basically, the storylines in Law and Order are either the guilty guy gets convicted or the guilty guy gets off somehow. Yeah, I don't see a lot of storylines with innocent guys. I don't know about CSI or, well, the CSI never goes into court. I was trying, sure, to pick one that I watch. Absolutely. And I guess, is there room in your mind for an innocent man being wrongly charged? Oh, sure. And in that regard, you paused for a little bit when Mr. Kratz asked you whether you think exonerating wrongfully convicted people is a good thing or not. You paused and you gave, well, I had to think about that. Yeah? You know, it's one of those, and then you think about it a minute, and yes, that is, I mean, would the concern be that somebody not get out on just a technicality? Oh, definitely. But if someone was truly, actually innocent, I take it you would not want them sitting in prison, right? For a crime they actually didn't do. Exactly. So, I mean, in his situation where the DNA proved that a specific other man actually did the rape, not him, it excluded him and showed who did do the rape. Right. You would want somebody like that, I assume, to get out of prison that day, right? Yes. Okay. And actually, when it came out, I was glad to hear it, that everything was justified, that they were able to do something like this for him. Right. Okay. And did you hear about the lawsuit that he filed after getting out? I heard something about it. It's probably like the rest of I wasn't involved. The name's not familiar. But did the sympathy stick with him or go away when you found out that he filed a lawsuit to try to get some money for that? Well, to me it would be only fair that if he was wrongfully convicted of something to lose 18 years of pay, it's only fair that he gets the chance to make it up. I hear the union, steward. I'm sorry. No, not at all. You'll hear a lot of law enforcement officers testify here, maybe for both sides, but regardless who calls them, there are a lot of law enforcement officers testify. I will ask, and I think the court will instruct you, that in weighing the testimony of a police officer or a law enforcement officer, to consider that person's testimony just like you would any other human being who took the witness stand. Can you do that? Oh, yes. I mean, they're human. They're human beings. Right. Okay. Exactly. That's any witness here will be, and you would hope that every witness would tell the truth under oath. Yes. But is a law enforcement officer any more likely to honor that oath than anyone else who does some other line of work? It shouldn't be. Everyone who takes an oath to tell the truth should be telling the truth. Right? No matter who they are. And then, can you look beyond the badge and, oh yes, and decide, do I believe this? Does it make sense? Is there a reason this person might or might not lie? And consider every witness in that way, including police officers? Oh yes. What, if anything, have you heard about a blood vial? A vial of blood that may be at issue in this case? That, if it came up after I got my paper from the courthouse, and I have a mute button on my TV that's getting a real healthy workout. Okay, so the answer is you just don't know anything at all about it? No, I don't. Okay, all right. Last sort of question or two. You work with a number of people at Worthington? Yes, I do. Whatever your verdict would be, if you serve on this jury, when you go back to work, my guess is there are going to be people who think you did the right thing and people who are not very happy with you. Right? Are you going to deal with that? How are you going to deal with that? Well, I'll put it this way. I work the 5th shift at Worthington. That's 10 p.m. Friday night to 10 a.m. Saturday, and then 10 p.m. Saturday night to 10 a.m. Sunday. There aren't a lot of people I work with during those hours. On Saturday nights, there's usually 3 of us in the plant. Okay, but what about the Calumet County Fair Board when that comes around late next summer? I have pretty broad shoulders. I have people that like me and they don't like me. That's the way it is. No matter what I do, I have people that just don't like me for whatever reason. I don't understand why, and then I have good friends, and my good friends will support whatever I do. That's all I need to know. Thank you. All right. Voir dire examination by the court. Miss Barber, I have just one question. You mentioned earlier that you knew Jerry Poggle. Yes, from school. Should he be called as a witness in this case, you'd have to judge his testimony just as any other witness and not be either favorably inclined or unfavorably inclined based on your acquaintance with him. Right, which I gather is not close, but you know who he is? Right. If you're selected as a juror, would you give any more or less weight to his testimony should he be called to testify? I wouldn't give more or less. The court. Thank you. The clerk will, Attorney Strang. I'm sorry, I had one follow-up. The court. Okay. Attorney Strang on that. Voir dire examination by Attorney Strang. I think you just moved to Valders in 1989? Yes. Did you know former Police Chief Wiegert? No. Okay. No. Actually, I don't know my neighbors either. Okay. The court. Linda will escort you from the courtroom at this time, wherein juror is escorted out. The court. Counsel, any motion from either party? Attorney Kratz. No. Attorney Strang. No, Your Honor. The court. All right. If not, the court will accept Ms. Barber as a juror.